So this is going to be one of the first scheduled videos, so when you've seen this, I'll be away on holiday as it stands. I can assure you that I'm having a nice time, hopefully not going to be isolated for a matter of weeks if anything else happens in the news. But today what I thought I would do to almost finish off talking about all the clubs in the Championship in the 2019-2020 season, I thought to give them a grade of their season. Obviously some teams were promoted, some teams were relegated, some teams had their highest position ever, some teams had their lowest position in a long time. So there's a lot of things that we need to talk over today. If you guys like what you see, you want to see more tier lists in the future, please make sure you do give this video a like. It's tremendously appreciated. If you haven't done, please subscribe to the channel. Who knows how many subscribers I have at this rate, but if you can, please subscribe to the channel. It really help. The closer we get to 1,000, the closer we can get to this collab I'm dreaming about. And please share the channel. It's the way to get me popular. That will really make my day. Without any further ado, let's start the tier list. Okay, to start this off, the picture on the screen right now is showing the different tiers and levels that I'm showing to grade a Championship team season. So the top level is stunning, just an absolutely unbelievable season. That could be a promotion, that could be their highest finish in a long time, it could be one of those things. Great is a pretty good season, overachieving to what I originally thought they were going to. Average season is an average where I think they achieved what they were expected to achieve, maybe could have pushed a little bit more. Meh season are teams where I don't think they've really achieved for what I expected and probably could have given it a little bit more. A stinker, well, that's a bit self-explanatory, a really bad season. So without any further ado, we're going to start from the bottom of the table and work our way upwards. So we're going to start with Hull City, and where do I begin? A stinker season for Hull City. I mean, Hull City's season was looking so well at first under Grant McCann. He got Hull up to 8th place in around December time, but then the owners looked at it and thought, oh, we can get rid of Krasicki and Jarrod Bowen. We're 8th place, we're completely safe. No. If you're giving away the two reliable goal scorers and assisters that really help your team, they were papering over cracks because that defence that Hull City had been a little bit leaky throughout the whole season. And when you take away the goals away, you need a sturdy defence and you need to shut teams down. The defence didn't improve. They had their whole backline injured before the pandemic. Whole season has just been a disaster. Last place back in League One for the first time since 2005. A stinker of a season for Hull City. For Wigan Athletic, it's hard to grade them, but I think I'm going to give them an average season because a lot of teams did predict them to go back down again, and that's exactly how they are. Although, if you judge it on performances, you would say they probably had a great season following that they were around mid-table, but their 12-point deduction completely killed their season. However, position-wise, a lot of people did expect Wigan to struggle. It's really harsh, actually, because I really think I should put Wigan in the top 2 tiers. But following that relegation and following they did have chances to try and get out of it, but they didn't in the end, I'm going to give them an average season, but honestly, it could even be higher than that. Charlton Athletic, I think I'm going to give them a meh season. Honestly, the only reason I put Charlton in meh and not an average season is because they had a terrific start. You know, they had survival in the Championship handed to them on a plate. They were in the top 2 within the first 6 games, but then injuries to Lyle Taylor and other members of the squad just completely depleted their momentum, and when they dropped down, Lee Bowyer just really struggled to get them to recover. During the restart, Charlton had some encouraging results, and that's honestly why I've not given them a stinker, because their drop of momentum in itself gives them a stinker of a season. But the fact that Lee Bowyer did give a little bit of fight to Charlton, they took it to the final day, they got absolutely battered by Leeds, and they ultimately go down by results going against their way, and a Barnsley last minute goal ultimately was the final nail in the coffin to send Charlton down. So by the smallest of margins, Charlton were relegated, but following the style they had, probably they should have done better. So I'm going to give them a meh season for me. With Barnsley, I've got to give them a great season. Barnsley, I know I predicted them to survive, but I don't know what I was thinking back then when I was doing my original Championship predictions. When you consider Barnsley, you consider them to be a bit of a yo-yo club, Championship League One, a little bit similar to Rotherham, who of course have now joined Barnsley now in the Championship. But the thing is with Barnsley, they had a really poor start. It would have been a stinker season when they were managed under Daniel Stendel. Gerard Struber's come in, brought some players in that he's worked with, and Barnsley looked like a completely different team. You know, Barnsley weren't even playing that bad under Stendel, but defensively they were a shambles. Defensively now under Struber, yes, there's a few flaws in it, but they are a lot more solid, and he's got a system now that they are defensively tight, but also they look dangerous going forward. And honestly, if Barnsley took more of a chances, Barnsley could have been even higher in the table. And ultimately, the fact they survived, I'm giving them a great season. You know, even if they got relegated, I would have said it probably would have still been an average season for Barnsley, because that's what you expect from them. But the fact they survived, I'm giving them a great season. With Birmingham, I think it has to be a stinker. Birmingham, with the expectation of Birmingham, the players that they got and that squad, it shouldn't be finishing that low as 20th place. Pep Clotter has been a bit of a so-so manager, and I think he was hiding because he was a yes man to the board. Eventually, whilst he actually had a good bit of momentum just before COVID broke out, his really poor form since COVID-19 was absolutely horrific. They dropped down, and the fact that Birmingham were really relegated and they were pulled into the relegation battle and had to rely on results to survive, it's been a really poor season for Birmingham, because under Gary Monk, they looked to have some certain bits of progression. I mean, I know they didn't finish all that high the year before, but that's because they had a 9-point deduction. Without that points deduction, they would have been in around mid-table, a little bit where Wigan would be if they didn't have that 12-point deduction as well. For Birmingham to finish this low, for me, is a stinker of a season. For Luton Town, I think I'm going to give them an average season. I was thinking great as well, but with Luton Town, they came to League One as champions, and for me, I did expect a little bit more from the start of the season. Under Graham Jones, it just did not look the same. Whilst they did look good going forward at a couple of games, defensively they were just completely all over the place, and whilst they still could be defensively all over the place under Nathan Jones, I mean 5-0 to Reading, they are a lot more consistent and they can take their chances more, and they look like the Luton of old that I've seen from League One. And the fact I've seen that now, it's been a pretty average season, and to survive in around 19th place as well, I think they've recovered tremendously well. If they finished higher, it would have been a great season for me. I think they definitely had the quality to finish in around 14th or 15th place, but the fact they finished 19th, I'll say it's an average season, but it's something to aspire to for Luton next year. For Huddersfield Town, I'm struggling with this one. I think for me, it's going to have to be another stinker. Huddersfield being a team that have been recently relegated to the Premier League, they finished 18th place. I mean, yes, under Jan Siver, they were completely atrocious and they were completely hopeless. They only scored 1 goal in 3 games under Jan Siver in the Championship. They only picked up 1 point as well. The County Brothers came in, they improved a few things. Their momentum kind of ran out a little bit, and they hadn't scored for about 6 hours, which I think was the contribution to them getting sacked, which I still don't agree with. Huddersfield did manage to pull it out the bag in the end of it, and when you've got Colin Grant, who's a prolific goal scorer of any years, and they still finished 18th place, defensively, they have to take a long, hard look at themselves for me. I expect them, with the quality that they do have in their squad, to be doing better next year. With Middlesbrough, I think this has got to be followed by another stinker. When you consider the position Middlesbrough were in under Tony Pulis, fighting for around the top 6, they just missed out on the playoffs previous season, but it was utterly boring football, I get that. They tried to change styles and go for Jonathan Woodgate, who had been working in and around the club, but I think it was just a recipe for disaster, you know. Apart from the first game when they drew 3-3 with Luton, which, to be fair, I think Middlesbrough were a bit unlucky not to get all 3 points in. Middlesbrough have been below par for majority of the games. There was a spell in December and January time where Middlesbrough looked to be back at their best and they were being a little bit more consistent, but one bad result, they go on a slump. And their 3-0 defeat against Swansea when the restart happened, one of the worst individual championship performances that I've ever seen. And to finish 10 places lower than last year, I'm sorry, it's a failure of the season. Sheffield Wednesday is really tough. I was even thinking to join them into the stinker pile, but in fact I might just edge them onto meh. Sheffield Wednesday is so difficult to put your finger over, because in the start of the season they were not that good, but then when Gary Monk came in, they did look really, really good. They actually looked like a team you wouldn't want to play against. They put in a fantastic 2 performances against Leeds United, actually. They actually didn't manage to lose to Leeds when they played against them twice all season. And probably when they drew 0-0 at Hillsborough, they probably should have won. They hit the post. Having said that though, following their terrific form, pushing for the top 6, even pushing for promotion, they're going on an 18-game winless run, and that is how they completely dropped their season. And the fact it's such a low drop as well, I can only give them a meh. If they finished all around mid-table, maybe even pushing for top 10, I'd say it's an average season, because I think that's where Sheffield Wednesday are right now. But the fact they finished a little bit lower than that, I have to give them a meh season. It's been quite disappointing for Sheffield Wednesday this season. Now to Stoke City. Blimey, I mean, under Michael O'Neill, I'd say they've had an average, even bordering on great season, but I think with their season overall, I have to give them a meh. You know, with Stoke City, the squad they have, if you look at the players from goalkeeper to striker, they should be at least top 10 territory, if not pushing for top 6. I think we can all agree on that with the quality they have. But they finished 15th place, and that reason being is because Nathan Jones just simply couldn't work for Stoke. They're not used to be playing with a diamond, and Stoke are much rather willing to sit back and to hit teams on the break. And when Michael O'Neill came in, you know, it took him a little bit of time to get things going, but once he got things working, Stoke looked a completely different team. I believe under Michael O'Neill, under points per game, Stoke would have finished 6th with like 72 points or something, which is absolutely terrific. It leaves me excited to see what Stoke City will be like next season. What Michael O'Neill has done, he's basically saved Stoke's season from being a stinker and has nudged it up one place to a mare season, you know. 15th place for Stoke is just not good enough for me, so that's why I'm putting them in the mare category. With Reading, I think I'm going to give them an average season. It's been a pretty topsy-turvy season for Reading. Of course, they started under Jose Gomez, who were a little bit inconsistent, showed patches of good form, but then patches of poor form. Jose Gomez was sacked. I think the board wanting a change of identity. Then their technical director becomes their manager, Mark Bowen, but Reading look much better. And I have to say, with the squad of players that they have, they made a really good season for themselves. But it's important now that they actually keep as many of those players as they can. Ejaria and Puskas are uncertain over their futures. They need to tie them down as soon as they can. You know, who knows, when this video is out, maybe they would have moved to another club by then. But 14th place for Reading, their highest position since Jaap Stam was in charge. They have been teetering around in a relegation battle since getting into that top 6. So it is an improvement. So I would say it's an average season, but not quite a great one. If it was a great one, I'd say they would be pushing for top 6, Reading. Queen's Park Rangers, I think this has also been an average season. Likewise with Reading, recently they've been teetering around in a relegation battle under Steve McLaren. Whilst he had one good run of form, Queen's Park Rangers looked really poor and really disorganised. Under Mark Warburton at the back, they still can be disorganised, but going forward they look a lot more threatening now, and they picked up some great wins along the way, beating Leeds United. I remember that game very vividly, where Naki Wells scored the only goal, his last goal I think for Queen's Park Rangers as well, before he moved on to Bristol City. Honestly, I think if Queen's Park Rangers got top 10, it would have been such a huge improvement from Steve McLaren, and if that was the case, I would have put them in or around the great category. But because they're still in the bottom half of the table, it's progress, but it's not significant progress. So I'll say they had an average sort of season, but I'm excited to see them next year for sure. Bristol City, I think I got to give them a mare category. I think a lot of people had a lot of expectation for Bristol City. They made some pretty good signings. Honestly, I thought their squad was looking a little bit more complete. But I think the management under Lee Johnson can't get the squad to play consistently. It's like they turn it on when they want to. They don't turn it on for a certain amount of time, they turn it on for a certain time. It's a very momentous side, but it needs to be consistent. And that is why Lee Johnson was sacked. I don't know who they're going to get. They may have confirmed their manager by this time this video is out. I think it might be Chris Hughton. He sounds like the favourite at the moment. Overall, 12th place is not great, especially in previous years they've been pushing around for top 6. I remember 2 seasons ago, by December time, they were in the top 2 and they had a huge drop. Yeah, it's a mare season for Bristol City. I think they'll agree that it was quite disappointing. Blackburn, I think I'm also going to give them an average season. I think Blackburn are this mid-table team at the moment. If they pushed on for top 6 a little bit more and they didn't lose ground, I think Blackburn would have had a great season. But there are some promising signs coming out of Blackburn. I could see some really promising players coming through. Adam Armstrong, Sam Gallagher. Even when Bradley Dack was injured for a lot of the season, a lot of players stepped up, and I think that's key for Blackburn. The fact they've got depth in so many positions, it's some great progress for them. They need to improve defensively. If they can improve defensively, I think Blackburn could be a force in the Championship. Stuart Downing as well deserves a shout out. He's been terrific this season. Blackburn to finish 11th, it's a little bit of an improvement from last season. It's small progress, but it's not significant, so I'll say it's an average season, but if they actually kept in the race for the top 6 a little bit longer, it would have been a great season for me. Derby County, I think I'm also going to have to give them an average season, although they really pulled it back. Because honestly, in the first half of the season, it would have been a stinker. Thinking that this side were nearly promoted to the Premier League is almost embarrassing to think about. They were all over the place. Philip Cocu's system was just not gelling into the players. But with Wayne Rooney coming in, such a leader, and because the players may look up to him, I think now they've got a much better unity, they've got an identity, they've got a club captain that they can look up to and be inspired by. And performances have improved since he's come in as well. He's been a great influence. It's a shame that Derby kind of tailed off in the end because they did look like they were going to be one of the favourites to get in the top 6, but I think losing to Cardiff really killed their momentum. Once again, like Blackburn, if they kept in the race of the top 6 a little bit longer, I would have ranked them a little bit higher up a different tier. For Preston North End, I think I've got to give them a great season now. A lot of Preston fans could look at this season to be a frustrating season, and I really do understand why, because Preston had a fantastic start, which is so uncommon for Preston. They were in the top 6 in around the beginning part of September. They were first place at one point in the middle of November. But the thing is with Preston, in around Christmas time, they lost 2 home games in a row, and now is the beginning of their decline. They pulled it back a little bit, getting to the top 6 before COVID-19 broke out, but they had some crunch games. They had some really important games coming up, and unfortunately they just couldn't win, and they couldn't beat Derby, they couldn't beat Cardiff. That is why they couldn't get into the top 6 in the end. They pulled it back a little bit, getting 2 wins in their last 9 games, beating Birmingham and Sheffield Wednesday, which were 2 great wins for Preston. Finishing 9th, it's a much better improvement from last season where they finished 14th, but I think with what they had, they should have been in around the top 6. But the fact they were in the top 10 in the end, and following they had some terrible form, they pulled it back a bit, and it's a much better season than last year. I've got to give them a great season, although I think if they were in the top 6, even 7th place, I would have said it was a stunning season for Preston. For Millwall, I'm really tempted to give them the first place of the stunning category, but the fact they're outside the top 6, I'm going to give them a great season, although I don't think anyone expected Millwall to improve so emphatically compared to their last season. Under Neil Harris, I think cracks were starting to show, and they were showing a little bit at the start of the season. They did pick up a great opening win against Preston, but since then Millwall was stuttering a little bit. Since Gary Rowett came in, which I think is a perfect fit for Millwall, and obviously I was a little bit unsure of his appointment following that he didn't do good things with Stoke. He completely turned Millwall around, got them competing, and a lot of people actually predicted Millwall to go down, or at least in the bottom half of the table. No one expected them to be in the top 10 place. No one, and me included, because I got them to finish in 22nd place, which is an awful prediction when you look at it now. If they finished 6th place, I would have undoubtedly given them a stunning season following the massive turnaround of managers. Unfortunately, they just lost one too many games since the restart. I think back to the Queen's Park Rangers game, that was a huge blow for them, especially that they scored 3 goals as well. If they just won one of those games, they would have been in the top 6. So it's really tight margins, and that goes to show how tight the table was this year. But I've got to give them a great season. It's been an absolutely unbelievable season for Millwall. Not stunning, but a really, really fantastic season for Millwall. 7th place Nottingham Forest. Oh dear. I think I've got to give them an average season. Now the thing is, this could be really, really harsh on Nottingham Forest. For me, if they finished in around the top 6, I would have given them great in or around stunning. But the fact is, they had top 6 given to them on a plate. You know, Nottingham Forest have been constantly striving to get into the top 6 since the new owners have come in. They were pushing thereabouts last year, although they just lost their momentum under Ita Karanka this year. Namucci actually gave a new kind of consistency for Nottingham Forest. They're in a great position before COVID broke out, but a really poor run of form in the end of it. They couldn't manage to win their last 6 games of the Championship, and following this, a heavy defeat against Stoke. They are now outside the top 6 for the first time in 282 days. It's absolutely incredible. You only see this in the Championship, but the fact that they completely capitulated, I have to give them an average season. Maybe a little bit harsh on my part, but Nottingham Forest fans cannot agree with me more that it was a huge capitulation. There's no excuse. Nottingham Forest should have finished in the top 6. If they did, they definitely would have had at least a great category, probably even a stunning category, following how long it's been since they got into the top 6. Now we get to the top 6. So the first one in the stunning tier is Swansea. Now the reason why I put Swansea up there is because I didn't expect this for them. You know, they lost over 20 players in the transfer window this year. But the fact is, they had returning players like Andre Ayew, who's come in and has been absolutely incredible in terms of leadership, and their transfers during the January transfer window has been exactly what they needed to cement their place in and around the competing pack in the top 6. And the fact they managed to get to the top 6 by the narrowest of margins is an absolutely unbelievable season for them. And following their Welsh rivals Cardiff, I'm actually going to give them a great season, because Cardiff already had a really good squad going down from the Premier League. I say they achieved in and around on par what I was expecting for Cardiff. Obviously, I predicted Cardiff to win the whole championship. Yeah, under Neil Warnock, that was just not going to happen, unfortunately. But the fact they managed to did recover, he pulled a U-turn on mid-table mediocrity with Neil Harris coming in, getting him into the top 6. I'd say it's been a great season for Cardiff. Likewise with Cardiff, I'm going to put Fulham in the great category. I think no one can deny with their squad, they've got so many star quality players. But I think with the squad they do have, they probably should have achieved for a little bit more than what they had. They didn't even finish top 3, they finished 4th place in the end. And that was because of inconsistency, especially in Scott Parker's management in how he sets up the team. But you cannot deny some performances individually on their own have been absolutely incredible. I think back to their 4-0 victory over Millwall, where they were absolutely emphatic in that game. It was a completely perfect performance by Fulham. And the fact they could do that to teams, you know, it goes to show how incredible their side is, especially for a championship team. And I'm going to tell you now, with the last 3 teams, they are all having stunning seasons. Brentford especially. I mean, Brentford, who finished 9th last year, under Thomas Frank, I wasn't sure about him, but players like Said Benrahma, Brian Mbeumo, Ollie Watkins, Rico Henry, Ethan Pinnock, Eric Dalsgaard, David Raya, I can name the whole squad, Matthias Jensen, Tarek Fosu, so many players, Emiliano Marcondes, so many players in that Brentford squad have had unbelievable seasons. Obviously, it'll be an even more of a stunning season if they get promoted to the Premier League, but it's their highest position that they ever reached in their 113-year history. Even if they don't get promoted, it's been a stunning season. With West Brom and Leeds, obviously, yes, stunning seasons. Achieving promotion to the Premier League, especially for Leeds United, who've not been in the Premier League for over 16 years now. With West Brom, I think we always knew they were going to be in or around up there, but it was about having gut, keeping a consistency, and the fact they lost the less games, they look so defensively organised under Slaven Bilic. They've got the most complete squad for me in the whole championship. It's been a stunning season for West Brom, especially following that playoff heartbreak they had against Villa, losing to them on penalties. And with Leeds, obviously, they had their heartbreak against Derby, losing it at the death. 2 playoff losers from last year are actually the 2 that get promoted, and I have to say they both thoroughly deserve it. So there is the complete tier list of all the championship teams' seasons. Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments down below. Have I been too harsh? Have I been too generous to some certain teams? Let me know which teams in comments down below. But that was all. If you guys like what you see, you want to see more content, please make sure you do give this video a like. It's tremendously appreciated. I'm probably not going to respond to comments since I'm on holiday right now, but if you haven't done, please subscribe to the channel. It would really make my day. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video, and as always, take care.